So what's interesting about diet is that we know this from our studies, but what part of the diet actually contributes to cancer? And that's where things sort of bog down a lot.
Dr. Jason Fung is a Canadian nephrologist who has reshaped the understanding of weight loss and metabolic health. Known for his groundbreaking research on fasting and nutrition, he challenges traditional medical beliefs by highlighting the link between diet, metabolism, and chronic diseases like cancer. Through his books and lectures, Dr. Fung has helped countless individuals take charge of their health, demonstrating that food is more than just sustenance. It's a powerful tool for healing. In this video, Dr. Jason Fung will highlight 4 common foods that are linked to cancer cells. Eliminating these foods from our diet can greatly reduce the risk of cancer and provide an extra layer of protection against this chronic disease. Not only that, by the end of the video, we will also share Dr. Fung's unique tips to avoid this chronic disease. But before exploring the foods that feed cancer cells, let's hear what Dr. Fung has to say about what causes cancer.
So in the 90s, so I went to medical school in the 90s, we talked about cancer and people had this idea that it was this genetic disease. It was actually not until 2003 when the first kind of convincing evidence came out that, hey, cancer is an obesity-related disease. And it turns out that it was a huge part of cancer. That is, if you look at the causes of cancer, sort of.
Dr. Jason Fung emphasizes the strong connection between cancer and obesity. Excess body fat, especially visceral fat, triggers chronic inflammation, creating an environment that supports cancer growth. Obesity also disturbs hormonal balance, increasing levels of estrogen and insulin.
Turns out that insulin is a major growth factor as well. And that is the link to a lot of these cancers. So breast cancer and colorectal cancer being the 2 most prominent obesity-related cancers, but also pancreatic and liver and so on. So hyperinsulinemia turns out to play a sort of huge role in those as well. And that's sort of linked through several different growth stimulating mechanisms of insulin.
When insulin, a key blood sugar regulating hormone, is elevated, it can act as a growth stimulant, accelerating the spread of cancer cells. Additionally, since cancer cells rely on glucose for energy, high insulin levels further fuel their growth, making it a critical factor in cancer development. But before we continue, this content is provided for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider with any questions about your health or a medical condition. Do not disregard professional advice or delay seeking it because of something you have read here. With this, let's explore 4 common foods that are linked to cancer. At number 1, we have refined carbs. Daily consumed refined carbohydrates like white bread, pasta, and other baked foods are some of the worst foods for cancer due to their direct impact on glucose and insulin levels. Refined carbohydrates lose their fiber, vitamins, and minerals during processing, leaving behind simple starches that rapidly convert into glucose in the body. This quick breakdown causes spikes in blood sugar and insulin, creating an ideal environment for cancer cells to flourish. By raising glucose levels, refined carbohydrates directly fuel cancer cell growth and proliferation.
Those highly refined carbohydrates are going to spike up your glucose, which is going to spike up your insulin. And then, because the high insulin just takes all that energy and sucks it into storage, there's no energy left for you.
Dr. Fung explains that regular consumption of refined carbohydrates contributes to insulin resistance. As insulin levels remain elevated, the body's cells become less responsive, requiring even more insulin to regulate blood sugar. This constant insulin overload has been linked to an increased risk of several cancers, including breast, colon, and endometrial cancer. Another key risk factor is obesity, which is largely driven by excessive intake of refined carbs and sugar. Obesity leads to chronic inflammation and hormonal imbalances, both of which are strongly associated with a higher cancer risk. Dr. Fung emphasizes that addressing insulin resistance through dietary changes is essential for both weight management and cancer prevention. To stay healthy, focus on whole, nutrient-dense foods instead of refined carbohydrates. They don't spike blood sugar or insulin. Replacing refined carbs with healthy fats, such as avocados, olive oil, and nuts, can help stabilize blood sugar and reduce insulin levels. Whole grains, legumes, and vegetables with low glycemic indices are better alternatives, as they digest more slowly, providing a steady source of energy without feeding cancer cells. Next on our list are commonly used, readily available processed proteins. They are really bad for our health.
People talk about meat all the time, but it's like there's a big difference between bologna and, grass-finished beef sort of thing. There's a huge difference because one is jam-packed full of chemicals and other crap, and one is just beef, right? And people have been eating beef for thousands of years.
Hold up. Did you know inflammation is one of the biggest causes of cancer, heart disease, and aging? And most people are making it worse with what they eat. Processed meats, such as sausages, bacon, and deli meats, are not only high in unhealthy fats, but also contain harmful additives like nitrates and nitrites, which have been linked to an increased cancer risk. Dr. Fung explains that consuming these processed proteins triggers inflammation, disrupts the body's metabolic balance, and promotes the growth of cancerous cells. The World Health Organization classifies processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens, indicating strong evidence that they contribute to cancer. A 2015 WHO report found that eating just 50 grams of processed meat daily, about 2 slices of bacon, raises the risk of colorectal cancer by 18%. This alarming statistic underscores the significant cancer risk even moderate consumption of processed meats can pose. Additionally, the American Institute for Cancer Research has linked high processed meat intake to an increased risk of stomach cancer, largely due to its high salt and preservative content. These findings support Dr. Fung's view that long-term consumption of processed proteins accelerates cancer cell growth. The key issue lies in the processing methods used, which introduce carcinogenic compounds that fuel cancer development. One significant concern is the formation of nitrosamines, compounds formed when nitrates interact with proteins under high temperatures, such as during grilling or frying. Nitrosamines have been identified as potent carcinogens that damage DNA and contribute to cancerous mutations. Do you know that processed proteins also pose significant cancer risk through the process of glycation, where sugars bind to proteins and fats, creating harmful compounds known as advanced glycation end products? They contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation, both of which are known to drive cancer growth. Processed meats are particularly high in glycan end products due to their preparation methods, such as smoking and grilling at high temperatures. What is the way out then? Grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish, organic poultry, and plant-based proteins such as legumes and nuts. These natural proteins are free from harmful additives, are less likely to spike insulin levels, and do not contain the carcinogenic compounds found in processed meats. Another common food group that are linked with cancer are processed fats. Processed fats, especially omega-6 polyunsaturated fats, like processed vegetable oils, fried snacks, and fast food, can trigger inflammation in the body, which is a key factor in cancer development. Chronic inflammation creates an environment that allows cancer cells to thrive and spread.
So in 1989, they were having evidence that eating a lot of these vegetable oils was actually very, very harmful. And a reanalysis by Ramsden in 2013 showed the same thing. If you actually look at all the polyunsaturated fatty acid studies and then break them down according to whether or not they contain omega-3s or omega-6s, because both are polyunsaturated, what you find in the top part there is that if you look at studies that primarily increase omega-6 fatty acids, so vegetable oils, you have an increased mortality.
A major concern with processed fats is their high risk of oxidation, particularly when exposed to heat during processing or cooking. This oxidation generates harmful free radicals, which can damage cells and DNA, raising the risk of mutations that may lead to cancer. Although omega-6 fats are considered healthy, research has found that diets high in omega-6 fats are associated with an increased risk of several cancers, including breast, prostate, and colon cancer. Dr. Fung suggests that the imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3 fats in the modern diet is the actual problem. Traditionally, human diets had a balanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats, typically between 1:1 and 4:1. However, with the widespread use of processed vegetable oils, the ratio in many Western diets has shifted to 15:1 or even 20:1, favoring omega-6 fats. This imbalance is linked to higher rates of inflammation and, consequently, cancer development. Adding to this imbalance, the consumption of processed fats contributes to insulin resistance and disrupts cellular metabolism, a concept often referred to as metabolic dysfunction, which is believed to create an ideal environment for cancer cells to proliferate. To reduce the risk of cancer associated with these fats, Dr. Fung advocates replacing processed fats with healthier alternatives. They can include extra virgin olive oil that is rich in monounsaturated fats. Olive oil has been shown to reduce inflammation and protect against several cancers, including breast and colon cancer. Moreover, avocado oil, being high in heart-healthy fats and antioxidants, is excellent for lowering inflammation and supporting cellular health.
And the sugar is very, very dangerous to weight gain. And it's more than simply the amount of carbohydrates.
Last and the most discussed food in the development and progression of cancer is sugar. Dr. Jason Fung underlined it as one of the worst foods for cancer patients and those aiming to prevent the disease. While normal cells can utilize fats, proteins, and carbohydrates for energy, cancer cells rely primarily on glucose. Dr. Fung explains that this dependence makes sugar particularly harmful for cancer patients, as it directly fuels cancer cell growth. But it's not just glucose itself. The connection between sugar and cancer is further intensified by its impact on insulin levels. When sugar is consumed, it triggers insulin spikes. Insulin isn't just responsible for regulating blood sugar, it also functions as a growth factor for cells. Elevated insulin levels, commonly seen in individuals with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, have been linked to a higher cancer risk. Dr. Fung notes that insulin accelerates cancer cell growth in the same way it stimulates normal cell growth, only at a much faster rate. This may explain why people with obesity, diabetes, or insulin resistance are more likely to develop cancers such as breast, colon, and pancreatic cancer. Statistical data supports this alarming connection between sugar and cancer. A large-scale study found that obese individuals were up to 50% more likely to develop cancer than those of normal weight, and much of this risk is driven by insulin and glucose metabolism.
Sort of sugar is probably one of the very, very important things that we really need to lower because that really supports it. And it gets to how cancer develops.
For those looking to cut sugar from their diets, there are healthier alternatives that can satisfy cravings without promoting cancer growth. Stevia and monk fruit are popular sugar substitutes that don't raise insulin levels and have a low glycemic index. These natural sweeteners provide the sweetness of sugar without the harmful impact on insulin and glucose metabolism. Finally, let's explore Dr. Fung's secret strategies that can help us fight and prevent various diseases like cancer. One of his primary recommendations is to undergo ketosis. According to Dr. Fung, the ketogenic diet, which is high in fats and extremely low in carbohydrates, forces the body to enter a state of ketosis where it burns fat for energy instead of glucose. This results in lower insulin levels, as carbohydrates and sugars are the main triggers for insulin release.
Full-fat cheese, full-fat milk, it does not lead to an increased risk of heart disease, but could protect you against something like diabetes, which does raise your risk of heart disease. And that's why the ketogenic diet has been favored by some physicians.
Complementing the ketogenic diet, Dr. Fung's main strategy is known as intermittent fasting. This fasting gives the body extended periods without food, further reducing insulin levels. Dr. Fung argues that fasting triggers autophagy, a process in which the body cleans out damaged cells and regenerates healthier ones, which can help reduce the risk of cancer. He explains that fasting also depletes the body's glucose stores, making it difficult for cancer cells, which depend on glucose for rapid growth, to thrive.
14 different cancers which are defined as obesity-associated cancers. So therefore, fasting, if it helps with that, presumably is also going to lower your risk. And these include some of the most important cancers like breast cancer, colorectal cancer, for example, pancreatic cancer.
So, that is all for the most common foods that are linked to cancer. However, even by avoiding these foods may not be enough. Our body needs a certain minerals and vitamins whose deficiency can also lead to chronic diseases. So, get ready for the next video to understand what all minerals you need daily to keep your body in a balanced state.